Two more committee members to join us before we get started. Is the applicant on? At this point, we're just waiting for the applicant to join us. So we'll continue listening to our background music until that happens.
Okay, it looks like Terry is on.
Yep, I see that. Terry, can you hear us?
Hello.
Hey, Terry.
Hi, Nick. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Welcome. Will you be sharing your video with us tonight?
I'm going to try if I can find this, Nick. Hold on.
Wait, he has to make it louder.
All right.
Increase your volume on the side.
I did. It's up with the match. How do I get the picture? Let me see.
Right here.
Okay. Can you see me now?
No.
Not yet.
Okay.
You said yes?
Not
Nope.
yet. All right. Let me try and do this.
Well, let me just see. I might be able to help you out. Where's this thing?
No, that's okay.
Here you go. Share, start video.
Let's see. Okay.
There you go.
All right. Great.
Terry, I don't see Chris on. Is he going to be joining
You
us?
should be on any second.
Okay, we'll just wait for him.
That's the other light on behind you. Better?
That's good. Yeah, it's fine. Okay. I'm going to text Chris right now.
Okay,
He
thanks.
told me he was jumping on, so.
Marisa, question for you.
Yeah.
Not you, Terry, Marisa. Since these meetings are recorded, do we also need to have someone take notes, or is the recording sufficient?
We can use the recording for now, but I think minutes should be taken as well.
Okay, so I'll need
And
a.
the minute, I'm sorry, the minutes can just be, basically who was in attendance from the applicant and the actions that were taken. They don't need to be more detailed than that.
Okay. Can I have a volunteer to take minutes, or Craig, what you're doing will your notes suffice?
Yeah, it's fine, and I have the format that I use on the other committee. for the
Okay.
minutes. Marisa, you're okay with that?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, so if you've just joined us, we're just waiting for the applicant to sign in, and as soon as that happens, we can proceed.
Yeah, you have to get on the Zoom meeting, so dial in. No, it's at 6, man. It's right on the email. Okay, fine. All right, my client's going to log in right now.
Thank you.
Sorry for the delay.
Terry, how do you pronounce the name of this operation? Apotheke? Does anybody know?
Yeah, I think it's Apotheke, but he'll be able to confirm it.
Daniel, is that right? You've been winging it too?
Yeah. Okay, Chris is on.
Okay,
Great.
we can kill the music. Let's wait till Chris gets connected. Chris, are you with us? Can you hear? Okay. Good evening, everyone. This is Community Board 5's Committee on Public Safety, Quality of Life. I'm Nick Athanale. I'll be your chair tonight. I'm going to run through how we'll operate the meeting so that everyone knows what to expect. We've got one item on the agenda tonight, 1141 Broadway. If anyone is here to discuss another matter, we'll open up to new business after this agenda item. To begin the meeting, I will ask the applicant to introduce themselves and their attorney, and then I'll turn the meeting over to a committee member who will present the application. I'll give the operator the opportunity to make any comments or statements they would like, and we'll give the public the opportunity to make any comments that they would like. Throughout the proceedings, any member of the committee can ask questions, make comments, just use the raise hand feature and I'll recognize you. After that part of the proceeding is done, I'll put the committee into what's called a business session. During the business session, only the committee discusses the application amongst itself. At that point, no further input from the applicant or the public is permitted unless requested by the chair. The committee will deliberate on the application. There'll be a motion. We'll vote on the motion. And that vote will be this committee's recommendation to the full board of Community Board 5, which meets sometime next week. Check cb5.org for that information. The committee will review our recommendation and will vote on the resolution. And that vote will be the full position of Community Board 5. All right. Chris, I'd like you to introduce yourself and Terry, if you would.
I'm Terry Flynn. I'm the attorney for the applicant.
Chris, you can unmute. Chris, you can unmute.
All right. I'm Christopher Tierney, and I'm the applicant.
Thank you. So the first question we have for you, Chris, is how do you pronounce the name of your operation?
It's pronounced Apothec.
Apothec. Okay, I was wrong about that.
Yeah, it's been known as a few different names: Apotheke, Apotheke, but Apothec is the correct pronunciation. It's Austrian German for apothecary.
Awesome, Apothec. All right, thank you for that. Before we begin, Chris, I understand that yesterday during the site visit, you gave one of our committee members a book of your cocktail recipes. We're not allowed to accept gifts, especially in advance of a meeting like this. I'm sure you didn't mean anything by it. And BJ, I'm sure that receiving that gift wouldn't influence your deliberation on this matter, but you've decided that you'll return the book. Is that right? Okay. All right, let's begin. Daniel, are you going to present this application tonight? Thank you.
I certainly can.
All right.
Shall I start?
Please.
Okay, so the application is for a restaurant bar in a hotel at 1141 Broadway. That's Broadway and 26th, the northwest corner. This does fall under the Broadway corridor restricted licensing area, so there's some considerations there. The space is it's kind of split level. There's part in the cellar, the basement level, and then part of it is on the rooftop. The rooftop itself is split between an indoor area and an outdoor area. So, otherwise the restaurant and bar look, lovely and have a nice concept. Of course, I think the biggest area of concern is the rooftop, particularly in this area. If y'all don't remember, that was a lot of what the guidelines in the BCRLA were covering. So we wanted to make sure the applicant could stick to these guidelines. They do meet the criteria for the rooftop guidelines in terms of the amount. They're not abutting any residencies, and they're a certain amount of stories above any other residencies. So that's all.
I'm not sure if that's correct. There is a residential building sort of catty corner. 212 Fifth is
right.
Sort of diagonally across the street from them. And then there's another residential building to the west on 26th Street.
Yeah, I think though I meant in terms of the height difference. They're high enough above street level, and they're not abetting, particularly right next to any residencies, as we've seen before with other applicants that have been problematic. So
can you go through each space, space by space, tell us what the size of the space is and the capacity?
Yeah, the cellar space is 2,400 square feet. The capacity is, I think, 55 inside. That's the numbers I have on the report. Chris, you can correct me if I'm wrong. The rooftop is 3,800 square feet with a seating capacity of 99.
Can you break that down, indoor and outdoor?
I don't have the number,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
square
I can
footage.
jump in here, Daniel. So the indoor space on the roof is 853 square feet, and the outside is 1,200 square feet. So it's actually only a total of about 2,100 and change total.
And what's the capacity of each of those spaces, indoors and outdoors?
The cellar space has an occupancy limit of 120 in the cellar.
Mhm.
And the roof space is a combined occupancy of 90.
Can you break that down indoors and outdoors on the roof?
The plan and the PA occupancy that I have didn't break down the occupancy. I just combined it for a total space. But
Okay.
I mean, if you want to pro rata it from, there's 800 and some square feet inside and 1,200 outside. So I would say it'd probably be more like 30 something, 32 maybe inside and the rest outside. Something like that.
Okay.
I don't know if that's exactly the right
That's
ratio.
okay. I just want to give the committee an idea of the
Yeah.
spaces. I can share my screen. I think it would be helpful for the committee to see the floor plans. Okay, so this is the cellar space, and this is the rooftop. This is the indoor section, and this is all the outdoor section. What's the plan for the street level, the ground level of the premises? Does anyone know?
Yeah, the corner, the landlord and developer has really done a really good job of repositioning the building. I don't know if anyone's familiar with what it used to be, but it was quite kind of a divey hotel, I guess. So it's a big, beautiful retail space that they're in talks with a pretty big retailer in the fashion world. So it's, most likely going to be a clothing higher end retail on the corner space of 26th and Broadway there.
Got it.
And then there's a small lobby area where, is one of the access points to my intended venue. It's really small. I think it's only about 600 square foot gross, with encompassing the kind of total, foyer to the hotel and the elevators. And there'll be a kind of a health food shop there, is my understanding.
Got it. So as far as you know, there isn't going to be any liquor licensing on the ground level?
Definitely not, yeah.
Okay. All right. So back to you, Daniel. If you could go through space by space what the intended hours and method of operation is.
So method of operation is a restaurant. It also serves alcohol. They supplied us with the menu, which again looks. Can you all hear me? By the way, I'm sorry. Can you? Okay.
Yeah.
So hours of operation. The applicant is requesting a 2 a.m. close for indoors, and
So let's go space by space for the cellar.
so for the cellar, it was 2 a.m. Right, Chris? Both for the cellar.
Correct.
What's the opening time, opening and closing?
Oh, the opening, 5 p.m. in the cellar.
Okay, so cellar, you're requesting 5 p.m. to 2 a.m. and the indoor rooftop space?
That was, go ahead, Chris. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, so the indoor, pending on the kind of the lunch. I mean, what I'm saying is, eventually at the onset, I would open the same at 5 p.m. But and I say that as rolling out. I will eventually roll out a lunch program. So eventually, I would like to open earlier, say 11 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
But just the onset of how I'd roll out the business, I would add the lunch hours, 6-8 months downstream.
But I think for the purposes of the license, so that you don't have to come back to us, I think we can consider 11 a.m.
Sure.
to 2 a.m.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Chair. And and then the outdoor rooftop.
Right. The outdoor was, I would assume then the same opening, 11 a.m. The applicant is looking for a midnight and 1 a.m. close, like 1 a.m. weekend close.
Okay.
And that's where the sticking point has been, really.
All right. So, Daniel, based on these hours, why don't you go through what the guidelines are under the Broadway policy?
Right. So the Broadway policy has 2 a.m. Indoor close.
Okay,
With
so
the-
that we've got no issues with the cellar indoor or the indoor rooftop hours.
Correct. It was the outdoor closing that was, again, the sticking point. It was a 10 p.m., 11 p.m.
Okay, and so they're asking for an additional 2 hours after our guidelines permit. Okay. Just for people looking who don't quite understand how we do this, the guidelines provide earlier hours Sunday through Wednesday rather, and then later hours an hour later Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. That's why we come out with the midnight 1 a.m. and 10 and 11 p.m. Okay, so has the applicant provided any reason why they should have hours later than the guidelines for the outdoor space?
Yeah, I mean, he certainly made his case, both due to COVID and the pandemic, that businesses are suffering and they need every kind of tool in the toolbox to make sure they can stay afloat. And further, he provided some interesting data in terms of sales numbers by hour, showing that 30%, and I think actually possibly even more, of their sales come from the hours of 10 p.m. to 2 a.m.
So let's hear from Chris. Chris, it would really be exceptional for us to grant such later operating hours outdoors. So why don't you explain to the committee why you think we should extend, go so far beyond what our guidelines require?
Sure. When I originally met with Daniel and, I explained the concept and, was informed of the quarter guidelines, I went back and did a really close analysis of my business, which has been in business for over 12 years in Manhattan, and really took a look at the numbers to see what I could make sense. And it really just came down to a matter of fact, as he was saying that, I've pulled, very specific sales reports from my POS system, which I use Toast, and actually compiled it together in a Excel file that I shared with Daniel earlier. But, I do 30% of my entire net sales are captured between the hours of 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. Of that, more specifically,
those hours are all indoors though, aren't they?
those are indoor hours.
Does your current operation have any outdoor space?
It does not.
Got it.
But if I could just add as well, when I took a further look at the day-by-day sales, 70% of my sales are captured from Thursday through Saturday, which is pretty, natural for this type of business. And it just came down to, normally, even in a non-COVID environment, I would be really inclined to try to ask and request these hours that I am, which is a 12 closing and a 1 a.m. closing. 1 a.m. being for the Thursday through Saturday, which is, the 70% of my sales. And which is already under, this is already an hour and another hour under what I know works as my business. But even, in the COVID environment, it's just, for me to be able to commit to the investment and the risks, to not have that ability, it's just really matter of fact. I just don't think that it could be, a viable investment for me. I mean, I don't know that I even would really see the business going, strongly to 2 a.m., but just to know that it's there is one thing. And then, I think the biggest thing is the sound. and I'm willing to make total concessions on the music and the hours of what can be done out there. And my style of business is so far from like what you would think of as a rooftop bar or club or something that does generate the nuisance and the noise. It's a speakeasy. It's a sophisticated kind of clientele. We have a high price point. I always make the joke, even I own the place and I can't even afford the cocktails and items myself. But, I've learned in 12 years in business that it is much more efficient for me as an operator to have less people in the venue that can be serviced well, that can, participate well in the program and the offerings, than to have a crowded, overrun space that can, lead to all kinds of other issues and problems. But I like having customers at my venues for a longer period of time. So I like to have bigger ticket prices with less amount of like people actually there, is what I've learned works well. But, I know it is an outdoor space and I don't have experience with that, but I know it's also New York City, and, I can only go on what I know as a business owner operator. And I'm looking at my sales data, and it's just, if I take that out, then, it's a significant chunk of the sales in general. And then, as we all know, in this environment, it's just, we really don't know what's going to happen, but I think we can be certain that it's definitely not going to be a normalized, traffic and business revenue for the next foreseeable, 2 to 3 years is what I'm hearing. And so I just don't want to get myself in a situation to make these commitments and these investments, and then, it's not working. And that could be a very significant part of my viability and profit. And
I think you make a good point. In fact, I think the phrase you used regarding these 2 extra hours is that you desperately need those late closing hours for the business to survive.
Mhm.
And, I think this committee hears that a lot. And I think we look at it a little bit differently. You may say, hey, I need these 2 hours to survive. You may think that that's a good reason for us to negotiate those hours with you. But the way we look at it is that if you need 2 hours extra a day to survive, this might not be the right location for you. And this may not be the right method of operation for this location. So, I don't know that argument really serves you, that your business model is so dependent on those 2 hours, 3 nights a week. That's of concern to us. If you don't think that, go ahead, Terry.
I don't necessarily think he said he needed them to survive. I think he pointed out that they are
desperately need, the exact words he used, desperately need.
Right, but that's not survival. He needs them to make a higher profit. That's clear with anybody, any business, anytime. I think what's probably more germane here is that the reasons for your corridor resolution, your guideline, they don't really exist now that COVID has hit. Many of these places in the area have closed down completely, and they're not going to reopen. So the conditions under which you approved your guidelines, which are guidelines for the corridor, don't exactly exist. Now he's coming back into an area, taking a chance. I think anybody now coming back in now is taking a chance, because we don't know whether the vaccines are going to work, whether every year we're going to see, every winter we're going to see for the foreseeable future, an uptick in the virus where the government is going to make sure the places are closed down. So what he's trying to do is basically make sure that he has the optimal hours while not bothering the public. Now, when he met with the members of the public that came to the space and he went through everything with the way they did it, I was not there, but he told me that they seemed reasonably satisfied. He also said that he will make the concessions that, look, I won't have any music of any type out there or anything else. So I think that if we build in some safeguards here to make sure that there isn't anything except the noise of whatever guest would be out there speaking to each other, I think that we can come to some compromise that'll work for everyone here.
Has there been any sound engineering done? Can you tell us if there's any sound baffling materials on the roof? Are they putting up parapets? Is there a glass enclosure outside, or is this all just open air?
So there will be a enclosure installed. The landlord is installing.
Tell us about that.
A it's a higher end outdoor enclosure area that has the glass walls on the surrounding and, a outdoor like sunbrella fabric roof that has a structure that will allow, to have some sort of heating system element. So yeah, that will be installed on the, would it be the east side of the terrace? But basically would encompass 90% of the entire terrace space. It just has to have a 4-foot setback from the actual edge of the building per code for the landmark building code.
So the east side is along Broadway.
Correct.
The south side and the southeast corner is probably the two exposures where we've got the most concern, because from that south exposure, which is the longest exposure of the property, you've got 212 Fifth Avenue catty corner, and you've got the other residential building a few doors down on 26th Street. What is intended for the south side of the unenclosed space?
Yeah, and to the plan that you showed earlier, the southwest corner actually is not going to be available for my use. There's actually going to be mechanical there now, so that little seating area will be non-existent. And then the little kind of corridor on the south side there cannot have any covering because of its proximity to the at the bottom here where it says, so that where you're pointing will be non-existent.
Up to where?
Just to the corner there.
To
and then
here?
where it says eating it, to about there, exactly.
Mhm.
And then there'll be some seating there, but that will be a seasonal deal. I'd probably see that 6 months of the year being occupied because there's no way to, have any kind of enclosure there.
But what about this exposure here? Because this is the exposure we're concerned about, with sound going across the street to the residential building here, as well as across the street, the residential building here.
Mm-hmm.
So this is completely unobstructed here?
As of now, yes.
No, that's a problem.
I mean, I'm definitely open to looking into any kind of, like you said, parapet or whatever sound mitigations can be installed there, as long as it can be applied for a building code and landmark.
Yeah.
You know?
Those are big questions. Tell us about what's going on the eastern exposure. So there's a glass wall there. Where is that enclosure that you were describing with the roof and the heat? Where is that going to be?
Yeah, so it's set back from the side of the terrace there. I think it's 4 feet. And it'll
Along
pretty
here?
much, and it'll pretty much enclose all of that seating that you see there.
These four tables, and
Correct.
this area here?
Yeah,
And where will it end?
right there where you have it. Yeah.
Okay. So this potentially can be enclosed by that enclosure,
Uh-huh.
but you don't know what kind of sound mitigating potential that enclosure has.
No, obviously it will definitely have, sound mitigation, just being what it is. As far as like a rating level, I don't know that yet because we're still in the process of getting it approved with the landmarks. Or
Do you have a sound engineer?
I plan to hire one.
Okay.
Is it retractable?
There is some retraction, I think. I mean, again, this is all, it's kind of contingent upon what's approved, but I think there is some retraction on one part of it that it could be.
We would
But
keep it
the
up.
walls around it are more permanent glass, actual glass stores and stuff.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
So you have been through landmarks now already for the enclosed space and also for the glass wall on the east side?
We've gotten the initial approvals from the landmark, or they determine, okay, it has to be this setback, it has to be of this nature, and then we just have to give them the final model of unit and final plan that is used, that they will okay it. But we're basically like, you know, an 80-90% approval based on the certain layout and setbacks and what in the type of structure it is.
So I think for our purposes tonight, we can't really rely on any potential enclosure that is still subject to landmarks review, building department review. I think for the purposes of our deliberation tonight, the committee has to consider the space completely unenclosed. If at whatever time you do get approval and you have a plan to erect this that's possible, then I think you can come back to us and maybe request another review. But for the purposes of tonight, I think we have to consider the space completely unenclosed. Okay. So,
Well, you're saying that you're gonna consider it completely unenclosed because you don't know specifically what the materials are, or because it's pending approval?
well, we don't even know if it's possible. I mean, it's subject to landmarks and building department approval. We don't see plans. We don't see plans of what it is. We don't know.
I just want to be clear. So if we were to find out within the next month what they were, we could come back next month.
Of course, Terry, you're always welcome to come back.
Okay, no, I just because the application's pending and I don't want, I want to be clear with everybody, that's all.
Yeah, and I think to the extent that, there's enclosable outdoor space that does have sound mitigating capacity, I think, that might be cause for the committee to agree to extend these hours. But at the moment, I think we're hamstrung by the restricted hours that our guidelines provide, because there's no.
I mean, do you take into consideration at all that the criteria for which your guidelines were passed don't exist anymore?
So the criteria we reviewed were the nearness of residential buildings, and we've got a residential building immediately across the street that's much taller, and we've got a taller building slightly down the block on 26th Street.
Well, the building that's down the street, I mean, I don't see how this is going to go all the way to down the street. And
I
then
walked
the
it
other
today,
building-
and it's complete line of sight from that building to the rooftop. And I think one of the residents of that building, Alan, is still with us. I'm sure he'll want to speak to that point when we get to the public session. But it's
I'm fine to
completely
hear
line of
from the
sight.
residents then.
Completely open line of sight. So let's take a break. Let me open it up to the committee if anyone has any questions or comments. Otherwise, let's hear from the public and the residents to see if they have any comments. Does anyone from the committee want to speak? Raise your hand.
Nick, I have a couple of questions.
Okay, Todd.
I don't recall seeing anything in the online share. So what is the capacity of this place?
We went through that at the beginning. The cellar space capacity of 120, but those are permitted hours. We don't have an issue with that. The rooftop has two spaces, one indoor and the other outdoor. The indoor space also has hours that are consistent with our guidelines. We don't have issue with that. Capacity of the indoor rooftop space, the applicant estimates is about 32. What we're talking about now is the unenclosed outdoor space, which has a capacity, if my math is correct, about 68.
No, that would be 58 because it's 90 people total.
Got it. Okay. So
I just add one thing, having served on the Broadway Corridor Committee, which was that another major concern, in addition to the nearby buildings, was just the general footprint and, assuming normal times, which they are not, is the number of people on the sidewalks and coming and going at late night hours. So that it's not just the nearness of the residential buildings, it's also the foot traffic.
Sure.
Everything's closed by 10 now.
Okay. Anything else, Todd? Okay.
Oh, yeah, my only other comment is, I wonder in the context of this review, I mean, they don't really know. This is a new business and it's perspective. They're just speculating about the impact of the later hours on that outdoor space. So my only comment would be, during the period of the pandemic, we might be able to be flexible on their downstairs out. Well, the downstairs hours are not.
The downstairs hours are compliant. We're not giving them any issue with that.
Right. So the issue is really just the sound. Okay.
The unenclosed outdoor space. Okay. Simon, you had your hand up.
Chris, you mentioned your time in business, 12 years elsewhere. Can you tell me a little bit about that? And can you tell me about your clientele target?
Yeah, so we've been in business 12 years down in Chinatown, actually, on Dwyer Street. It's one of the few streets that actually does a little almost 90-degree turn. It's quite famous for movies and stuff. And so Apothek is apothecary in Austrian German. So we do a very kind of medicinal mixology, a very kind of plant science, botanical approach to our cocktails and drink program. We also have a location in Los Angeles, and we also do like a lot of wellness drinks and tonics that are non-alcoholic that have done quite well in the current climate with the clientele. But when we started, there's a lot of expensive quality ingredients that go into our product, so it's a higher price point. Now we started at $15 per cocktail, and now we're up to 18 and 21. So.
Chris, tell us a little bit more of the details of the other space. How big is it? What's the capacity there? What are the hours there?
Yeah, so the capacity there is 85 people, and the hours are from 5 p.m. till 3 a.m. We generally see our last service around 2 a.m. as it is, and everyone just kind of, we do last call too, and everyone's out in a short time. We've had a really good, we're right there in the middle of I know it's inside, but it's tight, it's in a tight knit little residential area there. And, we've done a really good job, I feel like, of being a respectable venue in the community and understanding of sound. And, I have a number that I've given out to the surrounding vicinity and community that's available to call as a direct dial to my management or myself when I'm there in the opening phases, for a sound complaint or issue that we'll, address right away. And I think I mentioned I'm obviously willing to have that and circulate that to the surrounding residents. If and when there's ever an issue with sound, that can be, dialed in direct and, be addressed.
Sure.
But yeah, it's been a good little run. I mean, we've become basically an institution there. I opened another location in Los Angeles 3 years ago, although I wish I probably would have just opened another one in New York at this point.
Do you have any outdoor space in Los Angeles?
Yes, we do. It's about 1,200 square foot outdoor. It's about the same size actually as this intended venue here.
How close is it to residential buildings?
It is not directly in the vicinity of a residential building. There's some across the street, but it's it's about twice as far, I'd say, as the Caddy Corner building. But actually, it's kind of in this industrial part by the LA River on one side, which allows for sound can travel sometimes it can't.
Okay, I think that answers Simon's questions. Buzz, let's hear from you.
Yes, my question has to do with your drawing on the roof. You made the comment that the this glass, this enclosure along the Broadway side is not complete. Is the plan for the interior space, is that complete and approved by Landmarks? Is that actually
that space exists? Yeah.
Oh, it exists?
Yeah, the enclosed space already exists.
I see.
Yeah, and again, with respect to the Landmark, they have approved the location and setback and area that the enclosure takes up. It's basically approved. They just, in their system and protocol, they just have to have the actual, I guess, model or style final plan.
Sure, we understand that. And
sign off on it. So,
You don't have to do a mock-up?
yeah, I actually do have mock-ups. I'm happy to send you guys the plan that has been already submitted to the landmark.
Okay.
And we'd also like to see, the sound engineer's review of that material when the time comes. I mean, right now we have to consider it as unenclosed, but assuming that you're going to want to come back to us for reconsideration once you have the enclosure more realistic, at that point we'll need to see the sound engineer's report of that enclosure. Let's go to Joseph.
I'm sorry if this is a repeat, but I think someone mentioned before that there were at least 2 residential buildings within earshot potentially of the space. Would either you or Daniel, whoever has them handy, mind just giving me those addresses? It'd be helpful to look at them myself.
The one is 212 Fifth, and the other is Alan Miles. Let me see if I have his address.
Wait, so it sounds like you maybe have
22 West 26th Street.
All right, thank you.
Sure. Anything else from the committee, or should we go to the public?
I have a question.
BJ.
Yep, just a clarifying, I saw from the last email exchange with Daniel and Chris that the hours for the rooftop, Chris is wanted to keep it to 10 to 11 p.m. And yesterday when Leslie, who was representing the 29th Street Association and the residents' concern was that at 1 a.m., 2 a.m. on the rooftop, the previous tenant or the proprietor had music going and the music did travel, down there. So her thing was, if it's like, 1 a.m. is way too late. But again, if the proprietor is saying they'll be closing at 10 p.m. or 11 p.m., I do wonder about that, and definitely with the enclosure. So I'm sure we'll hear from the neighborhood residents, but just wanted to clarify that is the point that it's closing at 10 p.m. or that there's live music? Because he said there was no live music there.
Both. So BJ, hours and sound are 2 separate criteria that we evaluate. It doesn't mean that if they, agree to our required hours, that they can be as loud as they want. Once we get an understanding about closing hours, then we have to talk about sound, because they still can't be disturbing during their operating hours, even if they are compliant. So they're separate criteria.
On behalf of Daniels and the committee who did this work, Sarah and I visited, and there was that discussion about the music, and it was like, it's just piano music. There's no live music up there. So just wanted to add that. So
the application does indicate live music. Is that indoors, Chris? Where will the live music be?
That's only going to be in the cellar.
Okay.
Space.
All right. Let's hear from Daniel.
Thank you. Yeah, just maybe 2 more quick points. I don't see anyone from 29th Street Association on the call, so I can maybe just summarize kind of their views. I know from the visit yesterday, Chris had made concessions that there'd be no music outside and only ambient level music inside. Further, that the doors of the indoor space would close at 10 p.m. So none of that indoor music would travel outside. And the 29th Street Association was willing to make a concession for outdoor hours to 12 and 1. So that's, an hour less than he's asking, but nonetheless, I guess the one other point I wanted to mention, just throw it out there, was that this is part of a hotel, and in the BCRLA guidelines, we left a tiny bit of flexibility for hotels, mostly for hotel guests, because there are a lot of hotels in that area coming up. That was a big concern, a big kind of motivation for the guidelines initially.
Right, and the flexibility for hotel guests is if the operator wanted to extend the hours of operation of an indoor space later just for hotel guests, we would consider that. But it doesn't apply to the outdoor space, which is really what I think the sticking point is going to be here. Okay, thanks, Daniel. Buzz, did you want to say something else? Can't hear you.
The slippery slope problem.
course.
That if, again, if we do decide to grant exceptions to the corridor,
Which we have not to
regulations.
date, which we have not to date, you should know.
right? Well, again, other people find out what the hours are, the next applicant comes and says they want the same thing
Of course.
and uses
Of
it
course.
as an argument.
But to your point, Buzz, we have not compromised on the Broadway hours.
But these folks are asking for it, that's all I'm saying.
Yes. July?
Thank you, Nick. 2 points. One, I completely agree with Buzz's point just now, the slippery slope problem. This is not the first time, I think, with every application my team has received since COVID, every single applicant has cited, the need for longer hours, the need to request for the committee to compromise. So that's point number one. Point number two, the state has got a curfew hour, I believe at 11 p.m. right now for indoor. Well, there is no indoor operations right now, but even for outdoors, 11 p.m. during COVID. So the argument that the applicant is using, the extended hours will help during COVID, is not a valid argument.
Sure.
Well,
Okay.
COVID hours.
Why don't
just,
we-
just a point, COVID hours change, but go ahead. Based
Yeah,
on-
no, I mean, listen, these hours are going to be in effect way
Right.
past COVID.
Right.
Certainly, we're willing to rehear it once you've got the enclosure figured out. But, for these purposes, we're planning on a long-term operation here. All right, let's go to the public. Besides Alan Miles, is there anyone from the public who'd like to speak? Alan, do you want to go first? I don't see Alan raising his hand, so why don't we start? Oh, there he goes. Let's hear from Alan Miles.
Okay, he will be rejoining as a panelist.
For those of you who don't know, Alan Miles was a member of this committee for years and years. We miss him dearly. Alan, it's nice to see you. Let's put on your mic.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Terrific. Sorry, I wasn't sure how to use the platform. So nice to see everybody, and thanks for having me tonight. I live at 22 West 26th Street, which, as Nick mentioned, is catty corner across the street on the south side of 26th Street. Just as a point of fact, there are actually 5 residential buildings on the south side of the street, including the church rectory and the church that burned down. The rectory is still occupied. There's also another residential building south of 212 5th along Broadway. So just wanted to set the record straight there. There's more residents in the area than was implied.
Thank you.
I would say that the neighborhood is very welcoming of nightlife broadly. We very much want small businesses to succeed. Delighted to see that there is redevelopment in what was the Flatiron Hotel. We worked very hard to develop a set of guidelines that actually would allow nightlife restaurants to flourish in the area while keeping things from getting completely out of control. The history is that there used to be a number of establishments with 4 a.m. closes that had large kind of outdoor sort of spaces, and it really was deleterious to the health of the neighborhood. So the guidelines have really been effective, I think, at creating a balancing of interests here. We certainly have no problem whatsoever with the 2 a.m. close indoors. The rooftop of this particular space has been problematic in the past. It really is at exactly the sweet spot, being right at the corner of Broadway and 26th and on the 9th floor. So it's kind of in the perfect location to echo as a great deal of sound throughout the entire neighborhood. I'm concerned about this particular application only in the sense of it sounds like what they want is to have an outdoor rooftop bar that is open until late. And that is absolutely incompatible with the guidelines that we developed with you to help really help nightlife and restaurants flourish in the neighborhood.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay. Thanks, Alan. Let's now go to Jim Wright.
Unmute your. And Jim, you can unmute. Jim, can you hear us?
Yeah, sorry, I got disconnected. So,
Okay, Jim, tell us who you are.
yes, my name is Jim Wright. I'm a resident of the neighborhood. I live in a residential building, a 5-story building at 29 West 27th Street, which is the block to the north of where this hotel is, the establishment. I'm familiar with the building. So my interest here has to do with noise. And I think I understood, and maybe I missed this, that there would actually be no music playing on the roof. Is that correct?
We didn't really get to sound yet. I think the sticking point we're at the moment is hours, because if we don't come to an agreement on hours, I think this will be a denial and we won't have to worry about sound. So I think the details about sound will have to be flushed out. But yes, our intention would be that there would have to be either significant sound engineering so that no sound would escape the premises, or there would be no amplified music or music at all. But that remains to be seen, provided that we can agree on hours.
Sure. So the reason why I'm interested in this, there's a tall building at 230 Fifth Avenue, the Rooftop Bar. I'm pretty sure you're probably familiar with that establishment. And
Yep.
It's a very tall building. I don't know the number of stories. As I mentioned, we're in a 5-story building. And I can tell you that it's the closest part of that rooftop is about 200 feet, 200 to 250 feet from our building. And often in the nighttime, particularly in the summer when it seems to be more crowded, it generates a lot of noise, music noise at night. Of course, there's the kind of the street rowdiness, but I don't think that's really what we're talking about here.
Sure.
So, I'm sorry.
We certainly, that's what we're here for. That's what we're discussing. And we certainly take your comments about sound seriously. Anything else, Jim?
Yeah, so I would just say that in terms of acoustics, I'm also an architect, and I can tell you with the different building heights around here.
Jim, did you say you're an architect?
Yes.
Do you want to join the committee?
Is that a threat?
We only have one architect at the moment. We'll hire. We really like architects on this committee because a lot of what we deal with is sound engineering and sound mechanics. But go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, so I'm going to address that. And basically, my experience is that it's very difficult to model sound from noise from a complicated geometry that exists in Manhattan with different heights buildings. But what typically happens is there's a lot of reflection of noise off of adjacent buildings, and you may even be a higher building beyond where you are, so you get a back reflection of the noise. I don't have any specific experience of hearing noise from this rooftop, probably because we're buffered on 27th Street quite a bit. I will mention that there's several residential buildings in the 5-story height and higher range on the south side of 27th Street between Broadway and 6th Avenue too, which could be affected by this. Again, I don't know that directly, but
Great.
and I would say that you mentioned the 212 building across the street. I'm surprised that there's nobody representing them, but
Well, that's what we're here for. We represent all of the community, whether they choose or able to participate or not.
there's also a residential building on the northeast corner of 26th and 5th, directly across from Madison Square Park. And depending on the volume of it could actually bounce over there. Again, I think in my experience, it's really how you control the sound and the volume.
Okay. All right, Jim. Thank you for your comments.
But I just finished up here.
Great,
What
thanks.
I found in the past is that the enforcement of noise limits is not done in the city. So
Yeah, we know that.
So really, the first sort of threshold control happens here at the approval level. So you can't really rely on the city to come back and enforce it later on.
Yeah, we know that all too painfully.
I appreciate what you're doing here. I am familiar with the Broadway corridor guidelines, and I also do feel that any exceptions have to be taken very seriously, as you are. Thank you.
Great, thanks. We look forward to receiving your application.
Okay.
Joanne Siff, let's hear from you.
Okay, Joanne, we're going to promote you to a panelist.
Okay, let's unmute yourself if you would and tell us who you are. Let's unmute first.
Hi, I am a owner at 20 West 27th Street. I actually live directly across from Jim Wright. We are a 6-story co-op, about 100 feet from Broadway and 27th on the south side of the street. So the back of our building actually is situated where the northwest corner of the rooftop bar and establishment, could be affected. So many of you have addressed our concerns
So
regarding
you're talking about this exposure here, is that right?
exactly that northwest corner.
Okay.
So many of you have addressed our concerns regarding sound, and sound, as Jim also pointed out, it reverberates and it just sort of spreads, it kind of spreads across.
We heard a lot about sound, and we're taking those concerns seriously. Do you have anything to add besides sound?
I do. With guests, I appreciate Christopher's positioning of Apothec and it being more of a high-end establishment. And I appreciate the fact that Jim Wright and the Broadway corridor has addressed sort of the history of what has opened in the neighborhood in the past. So the effort to kind of elevate and contain some of what happens after bars and restaurants close, which is vandalism, which is really a disrespect for the neighborhood. So, being a small building owner, and I'm sure those of you who live in this neighborhood, what can happen, what's inflicted on our property after bars close is not something that we welcome. We certainly welcome small businesses, but that is a kind of a after effect that we find ourselves dealing with.
Perfect.
So that's the point I really wanted to make tonight.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Let's go to Robin Gould.
Okay, Robin, we are promoting you to panelist. And Robin, if you can unmute and feel free to start your video.
Okay. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, Robin, thanks for
Great.
joining us. First, tell us who you are, and just keep in mind that our comments, the feedback is starting to get a little redundant. We've heard a lot about noise and sound and crowds.
Right.
So, if you have anything different to tell us, we'd love to hear it. But first, tell us who you are.
Thank you. I live in the same building as Joanne Siff, and I've lived here for about 10 years. And yes, I'll try not to be redundant, but of course, noise is a big issue in this neighborhood.
Got it.
And I do feel that, yes, in spite of COVID, I go out and walk my dog every night, several times, and there are usually 4 or 5 stretch limos on Broadway between 26th and 27th Street that they're going somewhere. They seem to go into 1140 Broadway, which almost seems like a rear exit of 235 Fifth Avenue. I'm not sure what it is, but they're obviously going somewhere. It's more than, I don't know how many people are allowed to gather.
Robin,
but,
tell
yes.
us what you think about this application.
I feel like there are more than enough bars in the neighborhood. The quality of life is impacted on the street. People piss in our doorway all the time. Drunk people on the street. I sympathize with Christopher. I'm not anti-business, but it seems like he's already got some good businesses, and our neighborhood is full of bars and rowdy people and vandals and people urinating in our doorway and screaming on the street. And it's already really hard to live here. And I won't take up more of your time, but if I had experiences with bars here in the neighborhood that also had a hotline that supposedly, they made all these promises about how they were going to run their businesses. And I'm talking about the Oscar Wilde right now. And they made an agreement with Community Board 5 that you can find online that says they will only play music at background levels. We have a hotline. Anyway, this was in 2016, they promised this. And for years, they have wantonly violated their agreement, and there doesn't seem to be anything that can be done about it. So we feel the community board, you guys are the front line for us, because the cops don't seem to do anything. No laws are getting passed to make people, behave better. So,
All right, Robin, I'm going to rein you in a little bit.
Please.
I think we hear your points. Unless there's anything else pressing and different, we're going to move on to one other person.
No, but thank you guys very much for your work. And like I said, I basically would not welcome another bar in the neighborhood. Thank you.
Got it. Thank you, Robin. Last person from the public, John Borkowski. Let's hear from him.
Okay, John, we're going to promote you to panelist.
Okay, John, thank you for coming. Just want to remind you, the comments that we've been hearing are starting to get very redundant. We've already heard a lot about, I don't know what just happened here. John is sharing his screen. We've heard a lot about noise, crowds, things like that. If you would keep your comments to, you can just say, I agree with the speakers that we've heard so far, or you can tell us something different.
Yeah, I'll keep it short and sweet. I know this panel is more concerned about, it seems like sound and the business. I just want to say I've been listening, and I've actually coincidentally have been a frequenter of this bar. And I would just add my 2 cents that it has been one of my favorite bars in the city. I live in the area. I actually find it to be quite a relaxed environment, and it would be a good addition.
Excellent.
Yeah.
We certainly appreciate that.
Short and sweet.
Thank you, John. Okay, I don't see anything else from the public. Why don't we go back to committee? Any thoughts from the committee after this? I think, we've garnered a little bit more color from the public, but I think we're really just back to hours. And if we can agree on hours, then I think we can start talking about sound. But, if I'm reading the committee and the public correctly, I think we have a hard line on sound, on hours. If we can agree to our hours, then we can continue the discussion. So Christopher, I guess we need a decision from you. If you can agree to the 10 and 11 hours that we're restrained to in our guidelines, I think we can continue discussing this application. Otherwise, I think, the committee has to take a vote. I can't hear either of you. Terry, I think it looks like you're talking. Chris? Wait, Terry, Chris, I think you've got to unmute.
I got muted by the host.
Sorry.
I thought there was a offer of the hours being 11 and midnight right now, and I'm asking for 12 and 1.
So I think the comments from the 29th Street Association and some of the residents, I think is helpful, and we certainly value their input. But, we have to stay true to our guidelines. And certainly in the future with the community support, if they choose to support you in extending your hours, we will consider that. But in an application of first impression with completely unenclosed outdoor space, I think we have to strictly adhere to our guidelines.
Can I ask, when was these guidelines, when were they adopted officially?
Luke, do you have the date?
I will look into it.
I think it was December 2019, correct?
Could be.
Right. So in effect, I just would like to, as an argument, I mean, the guidelines were only in effect for what, 2-3 months before COVID hit? And so do we really know that these guidelines are viable for business in this community? I mean, I don't know.
We've heard dozens of applications, if not hundreds of applications that since these guidelines have been issued, and we base these guidelines on precedents of applications in this area for years before that. So these guidelines are tried and tested, not just on this block, but throughout our district.
But they would only have been in effect for
so
3
wait,
months.
let me sort of rephrase the question to you, Chris, because the question I think is, are you going to be able to adhere to the hours that we're limited to or not? It's a simple question. I think we understand your arguments, but I don't know that we really have leeway on that.
So you're saying that the closing hours outside would have to be 10 p.m. and 11 p.m. and inside's 10 a.m.?
That's correct. And certainly we would reconsider that once you have, more solid plans for the enclosure. But, right now we can't consider that.
And just to reiterate, when I spoke of my my sales data here, it's not that's not atypical of a bar restaurant, that you're going to find that's very consistent, I think, with a business in my caliber and fit. So that's just, it is what it is.
We get it.
So if those are the restrictions, then the problem is that the rent that I'm being asked to pay, again, it's a matter of fact, then it's barely going to be a profitable business. In normal times, it would be difficult, and in COVID times, it's it'd be a fool's errand to try to do this. So I'm going to have to go back to the landlord and try to explain to the landlord, I can't pay this rent, and I'm sure the landlord's going to say, I need to get this rent because everyone has to make ends meet, and I just don't see I just don't see it really working out, unfortunately.
We understand. All right, let's take this
real quick, just
yeah?
about the guidelines, Chris.
I don't think we need to talk about it further. I think that we've gone through all the discussion we've heard from the public. I think we're ready for a vote. Buzz, would you like to make a motion? Who would like to make a motion?
Let the person who did the investigation make the motion.
Okay, I'll make a motion to deny.
Okay. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay. Craig?
Yeah. Nick?
Yes.
Buzz?
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Joseph,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Will.
Yes.
Is Rob Isaacs on the phone?
Yeah, I'm here and I vote yes.
Blaga,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Todd,
Yes.
Craig is a yes, Daniel,
Yes.
BJ,
Abstain.
Simon,
No.
July.
I'm sorry, I'm just confused on what we're voting for.
Sure.
Yes,
Yes would be deny.
Yes to deny.
yes.
Right, motion passes.
Okay.
And can I say something again? So if I can I in an effort to like keep this moving, because if this has to, if we have to, this gets denied now and I can't, it's just like I probably have to walk away. Can I just agree to the hours you guys are offering for 2 a.m. and then 10 and 11 and we can agree to this and then I can try to go to the landlord and work it out? I'd rather do that than stop it now.
We can do that. I mean, procedurally, Vicky, can we reconsider this with the applicant's
I thought I
agreement
might have
at this
stopped it
point?
there in the 11th hour.
Wait, let's just hear procedurally how we do this.
You're muted, Vicky. Vicky, you're muted.
Vicky, you have to unmute.
I thought I did, sorry. As long as all the members of the committee agree, you can change whatever it is before it's totally finalized.
Okay, does anyone have an objection to us reconsidering this now that the applicant has agreed to our hours? Any objection? Raise your hand. Okay, seeing none, let's have a new motion. Daniel?
Oh, sorry, Nick, before we do that, do we have to discuss music or anything like,
Well, yeah, I mean, now that hours are, now we have to talk about sound. So, tell us about and I think we're really only concerned about the unenclosed outdoor space. Are you planning to have any speakers outside?
Yeah, just basic background music that you would find in a restaurant, normal restaurant.
Okay, so typically what we see with outdoor sound systems is that you have your sound engineer design the sound with volume limiters, with bass reducers. There's a way that, and the speakers have to be pointed down as opposed to up. They have to avoid hard surfaces that are going to rebound and then the sound will escape. So what we'll require is that you will have the space reviewed by a sound engineer. Your sound system will be designed by that sound engineer, and you will agree to abide by the recommendations of the sound engineer. Does that make sense to you?
That's acceptable.
Okay. Does anyone else on the committee have other issues about sound, given what we've just discussed? That's really how we handle it. Okay. So Daniel, let's make another motion.
Okay, motion to approve.
Second.
Nick,
Yes.
Buzz,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Joseph,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Will,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Blaga,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Todd,
Yes.
Craig is a yes, Daniel,
Yes.
BJ,
Yes.
Simon,
Yes.
July.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, so Chris, and Terry, just to walk you through what happens from here, Daniel will send you a draft of the affidavit that you'll need to execute, indicating all of our typical stipulations and the things that we've agreed to tonight. Because we moved this meeting, we don't have a long time to do that. I need to present this resolution to the executive committee of CB5 on Tuesday. So today's Thursday. We probably need to wrap this affidavit up, tomorrow or over the weekend, if possible.
Nick, as soon as you get it to me, I'll look at it and then I'll get it back to you right away.
It's not going to be anything different than you haven't seen 100 times, Terry.
Yep.
Okay, I just want to make sure everyone is aware of the time constraints. I need to present this resolution with a signed affidavit as a done deal on Tuesday to the executive committee. So that's really our deadline. If we can get this done by close of business Monday, that will help. Okay, this matter is adjourned. Is there any new business from either the committee or members of the public? If you have any new business for the committee, please raise your hand. Seeing none, motion to adjourn.
Second.
So moved.
Okay, thanks everybody. Have a great night.
Happy New Year, everyone. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Terry.